Hi, I am Nat King and this is my screencast for the module Creative Media Professional Practice Project. In this video I will be going over different topics including research I have done, the rationale behind my work, the current condition of my scene, the development process and my plan to reach the end goal. As a 3D modeler and environment artist, I wanted to make a scene at a professional level with high quality 3D assets, with no textures included as a stylistic choice, putting all of my concentration into modelling, lighting and post-production. I wanted a scene that I can put into my portfolio that shows off my modelling skills. It can be a piece of work that I can automatically pick out first if I'm asked how good my modelling is by future employers. The scene itself will feature the interior of a safe house several weeks after a post-apocalyptic event. In the past year I have been playing and watching many different media featuring a similar setting, and I love the chaotic nature of some of the environments I saw. The movies and video games that I looked at during this time have inspired me to create something similar. I also want to see an improvement on my modelling skills from when I first started the project to after finishing it. I also want to gain more experience working in ZBrush, as I see it as an important skill to have and it's something I am not that skilled at currently. I want to improve upon my lighting skills as it's an important aspect of my work and it's something that I can improve upon. I also want to use lighting techniques that I have not previously used as I want to expand my knowledge when it comes to lighting a scene correctly. For the deliverables, I will have several high-resolution screenshots of my scene from a pre-planned camera angle. I will also have screenshots of some of the models featured in my scene, as well as wireframe screenshots of the models. For my research, I started out by looking at and studying American home interiors on sites such as Pinterest. I wanted to get a good feel of the architecture, style and measurements of the homes, so I have a better understanding of how I should design my scene. I also looked at examples of indoor areas from popular movies, television shows and video games that were themed around survival and post-apocalyptic scenarios. I did this because I wanted to pick out the props that were used in these scenes so I could make a prop list for my own work. The next step in my research was studying the lighting used in black and white film and photography. This helped me gauge a good understanding of the lighting techniques used from certain professionals when they're working without colour. I knew automatically by looking at some black and white media that shadows would be a key component of my scene, and I would need to manipulate and utilise my shadows to heighten certain aspects of my environment, such as the mood and ambience. A technique often used is when light is shone through certain objects, such as blinds for example, to create interesting shadows. I intend to use this technique for my scene as it will add more interest to the environment. I gathered a select number of images as reference for the props I was going to make. These are a collection of 3D rendered models which are all suitable for the survival theme. These images help me create my own in-depth list of assets that I can design and put into my scene. When creating some of my assets, I'll look back at these images for inspiration and reference. Here is a screenshot of the blockout that I created near the start of the project. I wanted to get the camera angle in the general area of where it will be by the end, as I would be working from this angle throughout the project, changing it slightly throughout. I made quite a simple blockout as I didn't know at the time where the majority of my assets would be placed within the scene, and I knew I would be changing the location of my assets throughout for different visuals and shadows. There are 3 programs that I am working with for this project: ZBrush, 3ds Max and Unreal Engine. ZBrush is used for adding the high quality details that 3ds Max can't do. 3ds Max is used for the low to mid detail modelling, basically getting the correct shape and form of the model. Some of my assets will only need to be made within 3ds Max, such as the shotgun, as intricate details are not needed for that model. Max will also serve as the program I will use for making the light maps. Finally, I decided to use Unreal Engine as it's an engine I'm very familiar with and it will do the job for this specific project. It's also very good for lighting and post-processing a scene. It has many settings and it is very user-friendly. For this video I will be showing an idea of what goes into making the assets for this scene. I'm going to be going through the workflow of a key asset in this project, the floorboards. The reason I have chosen this asset in particular is because it was modelled and sculpted using both 3ds Max and ZBrush. The workflow for this asset consisted of making the base mesh in 3ds Max, remembering to keep the topology simple, even and consistent, as it will be subdivided and sculpted on within ZBrush. I then imported the base mesh into ZBrush, where I began sculpting key features onto the model. As it's wood, these features included surface details such as cracks and fibres. Throughout this process I made sure to keep visual reference by my side. In this instance it was images of all wood and worn down flooring. After finishing the sculpting I began the process of lowering the poly count, as even though optimization isn't a major priority for this project, I knew I would have many instances of this object in my scene, so I lowered the poly count using Z-Remesher. After getting the poly count down to my preferred amount, I brought the object into UE4. I then carefully placed the asset into my scene, over and over until the floor area was filled. Also, occasionally I would flip and rotate some of them to make the repetition less noticeable. This is a table that I have made recently to help me plan the rest of my work in the project. It has set deadline dates, one for each task. These are implemented so that I am not spending too much time on a certain task. I have also added a notes column next to each task to add general reminders. For example, for the completion of the floorboards task, I have a note saying to add less noise and the boards are too even. This reminds me to go back into ZBrush at a later date to rework some of these issues with the model. This project has been an interesting one for me, as I am very used to working with materials in my projects. And with this being a modelling centric project, I have had to learn a lot when it comes to sculpting and topology. I have already gained more knowledge when using ZBrush, which was a personal goal of mine from the start. I plan to reach my goals by the end of this project, which is to make a post-apocalyptic scene featuring high-quality models, no materials, and a professional standard of lighting and post-processing. I feel I am well on my way to doing this. This has been Nat King, and thanks for watching my screencast.